All right, so today we are looking at solving inequalities with variables on both sides. So we'll work some basic problems as well as work through some word problems together, okay? So looking at the second slide, here's example 1B. All right, they say to solve inequalities with variables on both sides. Solve the inequality and then graph the solution, okay? So the big difference here from what we saw yesterday is now that you can have a variable on both sides. Does that really change any of our process? No, it does not. It's very similar to when we were solving equations with variables on both sides. You want to try and combine your like terms. The only thing to remember is as you move from one side to the other, okay, you've got to change the sign. You've got to undo the operation. Now, what did I tell y'all when we were solving these normally? I said I always like to keep my variable positive. This is a big deal now. Why? Because if we ever divide or multiply by a negative number, what do we do to the inequality? Switch it, okay? So if you keep it positive, that's one less thing you've got to do. All right, so looking at this first example, I see that there's a 4m and a 2m. I want to get the 2m to the other side because that means I keep my variable positive. So to undo a positive 2m, you have to subtract it. And once you do that, you end up with 4 minus 2m is 2m minus 3 is less than 6. Okay, so nothing else changed. I didn't multiply or divide by a negative, so my inequality stays the same. Then the next thing I want to do is try and get the m by itself. So I need to add that 3 to get it away. And what am I left with at this point? 2m is less than 9. Okay? And then finally, to finish this out, okay, you want to get m by itself, so you divide both sides by 2. Okay, so m is less than 4.5. Absolutely. You could leave it as 9.2 or you can work with decimals. All right? So I would agree. That's where we get. That is our final answer. However, we do still have to graph it. Okay? So what is my point going to be? 4.5. Okay? Now, I can choose any number that is bigger and smaller. I don't have to go up like 1 like we were doing. So to keep it easy, I'm probably just going to go 5 is bigger, 4 is smaller. That just gives me an idea. It gives me a little point on what it could be. All right? So here we get to graph it. Well, what kind of dot are we going to have? Open dot, because it is not an or equal to. And then what is it saying? Well, it's saying m is less than 4.5. The reason we know it's less than is our alligator mouth is facing the opposite direction. Okay? So that means the 4.5 is bigger. Well, everything that is smaller has to go to the left. And if I need to sing some Beyonce to remind you of that, I will. Nothing. Nobody laughed. That's cool. All right. So that is what it is looking like, okay? So nothing really changes, all right? It's just a little bit more going into it, all right? So as we move on here, here's the first time where y'all get to ask the question, when am I ever going to use this again in my life, all right? You might not, but you're going to use it subconsciously because you're going to look at stuff and try and figure some things out. So right here, it tells you in this example, the home cleaning company charges $312 to power wash the siding of a house plus $12 for each window. Okay? So, what I'm going to tell you right here is let's go ahead and start marking some stuff off. So the home cleaning company is going to be yellow. They charge you $312 and then they charge you plus $12 for each window. Okay, so that's our first company. Our second company is Power Clean. Close in name, but very different. Power Clean charges you $36 per window, and the price includes power washing the siding. Okay? So what does it mean when it says the price includes power washing the siding? That means there is no additional fee. Thank you. Perfect. Okay? Now, the question here, how many windows must a house have to make the total cost from the home cleaning company less expensive than the power cleaning company? So the first thing I would urge you to do here is try and write your inequality before you use any numbers. Okay? So the two things I know we're using, we've got the home cleaning company and we've got the power cleaning company. So I said it was HC and PC. What we're trying to do is get the home cleaning company to be less expensive. Well, if it's going to be less expensive, that means power cleaning has to be more. So your inequality would face the power cleaning company. Because at that point, it always faces the bigger thing. It always wants to eat what is bigger. Are y'all with me? Okay. So now at this point, we want to plug in the equations that match each. So home cleaning company was here in yellow. They charge you $312 plus $12 per window. So we know it's going to be $312 plus 12, but do we know how many windows? No. So we want to call it X. And that is going to be less than the power cleaning company, which is simply what? PC. But what does PC charge? 36 per window. And then is there any additional charge for any of the siding? No. So you've just set up your equation right here. This is our equation that we just set up that we needed to solve. And it's all from the information in there. Now you got to be able to read it and filter through that, okay? So, as I look at this to solve it out, I notice that I have x's on both sides. I want to get them together, so I'm going to move my 12x over. Okay? Then, what does that mean is happening? Well, that means that will cancel. And I'm left with 312 is less than, 36 minus 12 is 24x. Okay? Then, to get x by itself, you need to divide by 24. So, somebody help me out. What is 312 divided by 24? 13. So the answer you get is 13 is less than x. Now, that is an answer, right? However, how was our question asked to us? Through a word problem. So your answer generally has to come as a sentence. So now you've got to figure out, okay? So it says, how many windows must a house have to make the total cost from the home cleaning company less expensive? Well, you've got a 13 is less than x. That means the house must have more than 13 windows. Okay, now, I'm not going to be a huge stickler for this, but there is a chance that you see multiple choice questions, and you'll have to decipher what 13 less than x actually represents. Y'all with me? Okay, now, this is an idea that you will use because you're going to come to a point sometime in your life, whether you realize it or not, you're going to be in the gas station trying to buy snacks, and you've got to think, I got $10. How many snacks can I get? Like, you do this stuff all the time without really noticing it, but this is an example of when you might use it more often, okay? All right, let's keep moving along. Here is another word problem, okay? I will continue to work it with you. I'm not going to leave you solo on any of these yet, okay? So here we've got A plus advertising. All right. A plus advertising charges a fee of $24 plus 10 cents per flyer. Okay. Now, the other company is Print and More, and they charge 25 cents per flyer. Okay. Now, the question is, for how many flyers is the cost of A plus advertising less than, so you want A plus advertising to be less than the cost of Print and More. So, looking at this, step one is to write your inequality. So what are our two companies?
A plus.
We've got A plus, and then we've got Print and More, P and M. Okay? What they want is for A plus to be less than the cost of Print and More. So that means Print and More has to be bigger. So your inequality has to face it. So now A plus is less than Print and More. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Now, I know this seems super simple, but it's because I'm doing it with you. Follow these steps. It will truly help you. Okay. So right here, the equation to figure out advertising for A plus is $24 plus 0.10 per flyer, which is X. And that has to be less than the cost of Print and More, which charges 0.25 per flyer. Is everybody okay with that? I know it's boring. Just stick with me. We got to do this. Okay? So, first thing is to not use the highlighter, but to subtract 0.10x from both sides. And once you do that, you get 24 is less than 0.15x. So then to get x by itself, you want to divide both sides by 0.15. And what do you get? I got 160 is less than x. Is that what y'all got? Okay. So, breaking down what that means is it simply means this, that to make A plus less than the cost of Print More, you have to get more than 160 flyers. Okay. All right, so let's take a look. I just gave you a little bit of time to work on this. Okay, so before you can just get off and running, you got to remember some PEMDAS stuff. Okay, so before you just work this out, you need to actually take this 2 and distribute it. Okay, so once you do that, you end up with 2k minus 6 is greater than 6 plus 3k minus 3. And then, now you could have simplified the right-hand side as you went, but I'm just trying to show you step by step. But then I notice I have like terms on this side. So I've got 2k minus 6 is greater than, well, 6 minus 3 is 3 plus 3k. Now, here's where we get to a point that something is different. I said that I always like to keep my variables positive. So I don't want to actually move this 3k. I'm going to move the 2k over here because that's something that I notice and that I like to do. You do not have to do this, but at the end it means you're going to be flipping that sign. Okay? So that means negative 6 is greater than 3 plus k. 3k minus 2k is just k. Then you will subtract your 3, and you're left with negative 9 is greater than k. And that is your final answer for the inequality. So then you have to graph it. Negative 9 is your center point. Something smaller would be negative 10. Something bigger would be negative 8. Remember, negatives are tricky. Now, looking at this one, you are going to have what kind of dot? That is correct, an open dot. And then since negative 9 is bigger, that means everything else is smaller, so you go to the left. Okay. All right, here is another problem. Just for time, I'm going to go ahead and work this one out. Okay. So looking at this, on both sides, we are going to have to distribute. 5 times 2 is 10 minus 5r, which is greater than or equal to 3 times r is 3r. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Okay. Now, again, looking at this, do y'all want me to make this as an example a negative exponent, or a negative variable, just to show you? I'm going to do that. All right. So say we just are working and we're like, hey, I need to move this 3 over. So if you were to subtract 3r from both sides, okay, you end up getting 10 minus 8r is greater than or equal to negative 6. Then as you keep working, you subtract 10. Negative 8r is less than or equal to negative 16. Then we know we want to divide by negative 8. However, when we divide by a negative, we've got to highlight our inequality, because we know that it then has to flip. So now it's r is less than or equal to positive 2, because negative 16 divided by negative 8, 2 negatives make a positive, giving you your final solution. So you draw your graph. 2 is your number, 3 is bigger, 1 is smaller. Here, since it has the or equal to, what kind of dot is it? It is shaded in. It is a closed dot. However, the r is still smaller than the 2, so it's everything to the left. We got a lot of those going to the left today. Okay? All right. So here are some notes right here, okay? So right here, some inequalities are true no matter what the value is, substituted for the variable, okay? For these inequalities, your solution is all real numbers, okay? So this is a lot like the solutions that are always true, okay? And then similar to that, some inequalities are always false, no matter what value substitute them. These inequalities have no solution. All right? If both sides of an inequality are fully simplified and the same variable term appears on both sides, then the inequality has all real numbers as a solution, or it has no solution. Look at the other terms in the inequality to decide which is the case. Okay, so that's a lot of verbiage. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, to just look at some examples. Because what's going to happen is just like when we were working with the equations and things eliminated, right? You were left with 2 numbers, and they were either equal or they were not. Okay, now with inequalities, you've got to decide whether, when it's left, if the inequality is true or not. So we will do this by looking at examples. Let's look at this first example. So here's what I noticed. We need to get our x's together, right? So I'm going to subtract this 2x over here and bring it to the Other side. Now, y'all are a lot smarter than me. What is automatically going to happen? Well, we know yet. Oh, well, hold on. Let's wait. We know that this 2x is going to cancel out, right? Because we moved it over. Right? Everybody in agreement. However, look over here. 2x minus 2x is... All right, let's work it all the way out. So we get 0x. Minus 7 is less than or equal to 5. What is special about 0x? It's nothing, because anything times 0 is 0. So that goes away. So we're really left with negative 7 is less than or equal to 5. Now, at this point, here is the decision you have to make. Is that statement true or is that statement false? Well, let's think about it. Is negative 7 always less than or equal to 5? Think about what we just said again. Negative numbers, are they always smaller than 5? 100% of the time. So that means that this ratio is true. What is left around is true. And since it is true, that means it doesn't matter what number you plug in there. You will always get the all real numbers. Since it does not matter what gets plugged in, because the inequality left behind is true. Are y'all with me? Okay. Now, let's look at an example that may or may not work out. So, as you look at this next example, okay, we're going to do it again just for time. We're going to keep working through this. You take that 2, you distribute it to both things here. The 3 gets distributed on the other side. 2 times 3y is 6y. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Bring down that minus 4. That is greater than or equal to 3 times 2y is 6y. 3 times 7 is 21. Then, the things that I see, we need to simplify these two negative 4's. So 6y minus 8 is greater than or equal to 6y plus 21. Here, again, let's subtract our 6y's. I think you guys know what's going to happen. 6y minus 6y goes away for both of them. So now you're left with negative 8 is greater than or equal to 21. Now, let's think about what this inequality is saying. Is negative 8 a bigger number than 21? No. This is false. And when it is false, your answer is simply no solutions. Okay? Now, again, again, this is a big deal because the number 0 is still okay to have. This only happens when your variables go away. So you have 0 times your variable. All right? Is everybody with me? Okay? All right. So what we're going to do now is work on your homework for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll work on it some in that activity for the support class. All right? So I'm going to get that out to you, and we'll get started.